Like, because when I think of vans, like, I honestly, like, I think of rock crawlers living in vans. That's what I think of.
Yeah.
But that's just a stigma.
Are you really that concerned where 35 pounds, like, I mean, you have to be at the point of literally about to roll over before you would even think about that.
Right.
And I try not to put my vehicles in that situation as much as possible.
Well,
so
I feel like I could 100% get an earth rummer stuck.
Yeah.
Like, no fucking trouble. I know I could get one stuck. I think that most people are going to pick their rooftop tent over the ground tent, just like you said. We are live.
What's up?
Talon, one of my favorites. You're like one of the old G's to me. Like, you and I kind of started right at the beginning when I got in this thing. So now it's like, what, pushing 3 or 4 years we've known each other?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, I came here early on, like when you guys kind of first got in the building.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, this is perfect. I can go introduce myself. And I mean, we hit it off kind of immediately.
Yeah.
So,
this one's been a long time coming to get you in on the podcast. You've started your own, and
yeah,
we've kind of started ours, and I can't believe it's 10 episodes. I thought you might be number one, but schedules are a little crazy.
Yeah, I think we tried. I think I was here when you were setting all this up, and I tried to get in, but you're busy, I'm busy. We're here now. So.
Yeah. Well, what you been up to? Kind of fill everybody in. We always start this like, I mean, I feel like a lot of people know who you are. So, but if you want to give a brief introduction about who you are, kind of what you do, and then what you've been up to.
I'm a content creator, been a full-time content creator, mainly on YouTube. People know me from YouTube for, I think I'm 6 years full-time now. Been creating videos for about 8 years. And I cover everything that I'm interested in, whether it's camping gear, pocket knives, just traveling in general. And over the past couple of years now, mainly people know me from Overlanding.
Yeah.
So
that's not where you started though. Cause like I feel like, like I know kind of your backstory, and I think you and I hit it off because you weren't just, you've not just always been an influencer. Like, you're a smart dude. Like, you worked in the real world and did real shit.
Yeah, I was working in the corporate world for a while, and I was just consuming a ton of YouTube, and I was like, oh, I can kind of do this. I travel a lot, and I did what is not good to grow a YouTube channel. I just started making videos on everything that I was interested in. So it was just kind of like vlogging, walking around whatever city I was in, like going to bars, checking places out. And then it evolved into like reviewing some things.
Okay.
Whether it was like camera gear, electric skateboards was a big thing when I was living in Miami. And then it just slowly progressed, which again, it's not a good way to grow a YouTube channel. But the reason I did that and continued to do that today is because I want people to watch for me. I don't want to watch. There's so many channels that are in a specific niche, whether it's like a car reviewer, and they're only going to those videos to learn about cars, which is cool. And you can grow an audience really quickly like that. But because I do review gear and I'm constantly traveling and like going on adventures, I want people to watch those videos, especially the review videos, because they know me, not just because like, oh, he only reviews tents. No, like I know what Talon likes. So when I hear him talk good things or bad things about a product, it's like it's coming from a friend of theirs because they know so much about my life.
Yep. So that you're giving a real life glimpse of everything that you do, because it was knives and guns, and it's kind of all evolved. But I do want to touch on like just a business thing. If I remember this correctly, you did it the right way. Your side hustle outworked your corporate job. It wasn't like you just up and quit corporate world and were like, I'm taking a massive risk. I'm going to go make videos.
Yeah, I've talked to a few friends at the time who did their own thing. They left their job and are pursuing their own thing. For me, I was working in the corporate world for 5 years. 2.5 of those like final years, I started my YouTube channel. And I didn't even really consider leaving my like secure job until I was making more money for myself.
Yeah.
So like making YouTube videos and collecting revenue from YouTube is one thing, but I was in the business world already and I have 2 college degrees. So I really put the business spin on things. Like everyone that sees me in front of a camera, they're like, yeah, that's so cool. Like they see the highlights of my life, but they don't see the 90% of everything else that goes on outside of that. And There are channels that are way bigger, get more views than me, and they just don't understand the business side of things, and they end up burning out and kind of failing. So
Well, I think that's where you and I probably hit it off right from the start. Cause like I love business. I think it's fun and it's very challenging, but when you and I kind of first started talking, I felt like you got the business side of it and you were doing it different than maybe how we've not had the best relationships with ambassadors in the past. And it's like, look, I mean, everybody's paid by everybody. It's a pay to play world. That's marketing, this, that, or the other. But if you're going to work with somebody and they understand the business side of it, then there's more of a long-term comprehensive relationship of we both want to see this brand grow, mainly because I think we both enjoy business too, and it's kind of like a challenge.
Yeah. And that's the thing with like me putting such a business aspect on what I do. Like from an outsider's perspective, they don't see that, but you from a business perspective see it. And that's like, I hate the term influencer, and that gets thrown around a lot. And I always talk about like why I'm not influencing people. I'm providing information for people to make purchasing decisions if you want to. Yep. I don't care if you watch my video and buy the product or not. I'm just doing my best to put out as much information as consistently as possible so you can make an informed decision. I'm not saying, hey, go out and buy this. Here's a discount code. That stuff is there if you want to use it, but I'm not influencing people to make a purchase.
So on that, because we hear, and I don't know if people are going to find this interesting or if we should get off this topic, but now I'm interested. So like, would you categorize, like, I want to say like Amazon reviewers or people that are like trying to sell through and affiliate marketing? That's one side of this. Like that's kind of the hustle and you're doing it for fun. And if you get something out of it, great. And then there's the other people that have corporate relationships with a company where it's, we call you an ambassador because you've got a following and yes, you do influence people, but it's through your information.
Yeah.
But we work on a more of a professional level. So I don't want people to think like, oh, you guys pay all of these ambassadors and that's the only reason why they support your products. Like, can you kind of clarify maybe why you support Free Spirit or even the other companies that you work with? Because I think that's where it translates.
Yeah. So starting off early on in my career, I did do a ton of affiliate marketing. And at the time, that was like all I knew. I was getting into the space. I'm like, okay, like, I like this product, say it's a wallet. I already bought this. I'm a customer. And now if this company's asking me to make a bunch of videos, like a little kickback when someone buys it, that's cool. But I don't like that model now because of how I've transitioned into other things. So it's like a double-edged sword because I could really push not ambassador programs, but affiliate programs and like really push codes all the time and stuff like that. But that's not organic to me. The way I like doing business now is, well, luckily I've grown my channel to a point where there are a ton of companies that want to work with me. I get cold emails every single night, whether it's a lighting company, a tent company, or anything in like the overland space, and people want to see their product on my vehicle. I won't even entertain those unless I think it's a product that I would truly go and buy for myself. Yep. Because I'm at the point where like, this sounds really bad to people who don't fully understand, but I kind of have free reign. I could get any product and pick and choose. So any company that people see me associate with heavily, like I would totally buy that product. And even if there's something bad, I mean, like when we went through the prototype phase of the Aspen Light, I was super transparent there. And I was like, hey, here's some things that aren't so good. So I feel like people who push affiliate codes and programs all the time, it makes them a little hesitant to be genuine, and it makes them a little dishonest because if I can go out and make a video and say nothing but good things about a tent, then more people are going to be inclined to buy it.
Yep.
That's why, like I say, I don't care about affiliate codes and people using them or not. My biggest asset that I bring to companies that I work with is organic, true content that they can use on their own. And it's really just associating their brand with my brand.
Yeah.
I've built my brand over like 8 years now, and I have this following of people who know that I'm genuine when I talk about this stuff. So when I'm putting a code behind it, I'm saying, hey, go buy this thing. Again, I don't care if they use the code or not. It's there to save money, but I want people to understand that I'm just offering that in case they're interested in purchasing.
Well, and some of that too is like, well, I mean, let's not like miss the opportunity to say sometimes that's like a way for us to track how our people are performing as well. So like we may use it as a tool because it's just so hard to track where dollars spent, how they're coming back to you. So like if you guys see us use codes, I don't want people to think like, oh God, Talon's just trying to sell something down my throat. It may be more something like, hey, Free Spirit's giving this to you because they just want to see, into the data or into the numbers. And that's where people that are just affiliate code users and like, that's the grind. Like, I don't want it to sound like a bad thing because it's where you started. And like, it's kind of like, I used to sell a ton of tents at Free Spirit, but now somebody else sells tents for Free Spirit because I got to go do something else.
Yeah.
You grow along the way, but that's the grind. That's how you get into it. You got to work your ass off to get there with nothing in return until people will start calling you. And that's the cool part is that's business.
Yeah. And one thing to go off of that too is like companies who really strive to work with creators and they're really pushing an affiliate program. I'm not going to name names, but there's one company in particular that the relationship fell apart where I was doing stuff in the business sense, like, hey, I'm providing you all of this stuff, whether I post it on my platform or not. Like, this is what we kind of signed up together for. But then they base my performance on solely a code or a tracking link, which it's so hard to control how people actually use that stuff. Because if I'm making a video talking about a tent, people are already on another tab in a browser looking through stuff. So maybe they didn't click my link. Maybe they're already ordering or whatever before they even hear that I have a code or they never searched that. So it's not good to track performance that way, but I understand like some people need a way to do that.
Right.
Like you guys do too. So it's really hard because like it really comes down to like, do I like this company? Do they like me? Do we have this relationship? I always say like, I would never do business or like create videos for a company that I can't sit down and have this conversation with. Yeah. Generally it's like, oh, can we have a drink? Can we go to the bar? Can we get like dinner or something?
Some sort of commonality is where it's at for me.
Yeah. It's just like, who is this person outside of business too?
Yep.
Like, are they reliable? Is it someone I can talk to about kind of anything? And I won't do business with a company that I shouldn't say I will never. I will rarely do business with a company who I have not met in person before.
Yeah. Well, and you impacted, for me in this industry, a lot of like people that I consider my inner circle are part of your inner circle too, because I feel like you and I similar in like kind of who we surround ourselves with in a sense.
Totally.
But we can get along with everybody. And I'm not a big drama person. I don't like it. I like to just chill out, have a good time and work with the companies that I believe in. And I kind of have that same benefit of the experience of like, I can't get anything, but I get the opportunity to try a lot of different racks in this world. Yeah. And so I have my favorites, but my favorite products are backed up by my favorite people in the industry as well. And so I still believe it matters who you buy from, but not just like what company you buy from. And I think that's what you're saying in this whole thing is that the people behind a company matter to you of where you're going to put your effort as long as they got products that you believe in as well.
That's another hard thing for me too, because when I tie myself to one brand specifically, especially if it's over like a year time frame, that takes away from me being able to be the voice of reason. Like, I'm not out here testing every single rooftop tent. I could do that, but I've already tested a couple. I found like one that I liked, which was when I first tested the Evo. And then from there, I'm like, okay, I'm going to put a lot of effort into testing all of these tents. I think there's only like 2 of your tents that I haven't fully slept in yet. Yeah. But that almost pigeonholes me for a little while. So like, this is getting really deep, but like, people should understand that I do have option to work with anything. But if I am specifically tying myself, like right now, I tie myself specifically to 5 brands, Free Spirit being one of them. And that's because I'm putting in effort, because I believe in the product and the company. I want to see you guys grow, because when you grow, then a rising tide lifts all ships.
Yep.
And that's kind of how I like doing business.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. So, all right, let's switch, because we just did 15 minutes on business, which I don't know if anybody was expecting, but you guys are very interesting people in the makeup of companies. And I think that that's why it's important. Is I think there is a bad stigma. And then I think that there is people that find it hugely beneficial as well to like hear that about the loyalty side of it. Or like, I'm a huge fan of Leitner. I love Bernard and Keith. Like,
Yeah.
But I'm running an RSI right now because I like the RSI guys too. And it's like I can swap back and forth. So it's more genuine. Like, I've seen it, I've done it. I don't want you to, you know, what do they say? Buy once, cry once.
Yeah.
You know, you're giving honest feedback. And I think that can spin us into the next thing is you do this whole thing that we call overlanding in a lot of different ways. And I guess the first question is, do you consider them all overlanding?
Yeah, that's a hot topic, because like, people have even different definitions of overlanding. For me, overlanding and camping are slightly different. So for me, overlanding is like stringing together a full trip where you are camping every night, with the travel part being the primary focus of it. So like, for the past 2 years now, whenever I'm going to an expo, I'll kind of put together a series. So like last year, Sam and I drove through Colorado, down through southern Utah into Arizona for Flagstaff. And every day we picked out campsites, but I'm filming and documenting the travel to those places. So like, for me, overlanding isn't just going out on a Friday night and setting up camp and then staying there until Sunday and driving back home. It's more about the journey of the whole thing.
Okay.
And then when you look at the types of vehicles and types of camping setups that I use, I still consider them all overlanding if I'm using them with that travel aspect in mind. So I have a Sprinter van, recently been pulling around the rustic trailer, whether it's a Tacoma, the Tundra, or even just like sleeping in a ground tent.
Yep.
If you have a Subaru and you're going to a camp spot up in the mountains, and then you set up your tent, you wake up the next morning, and then you cruise on some off-road trails to someplace in Utah. Like, that to me is still overlanding. You don't need all this crazy gear and stuff to consider it overlanding. And a lot of people are going to either resonate with what I just said, or they're going to completely disagree.
Right. So. Well, Will from Sherpa says vehicle sustained travel is the other business that we're in, not just overlanding. And I make fun of the overlanding term a little bit because it's driving over land. Like, it's literally in the word. Like, we're driving our rubber tires over land to get somewhere. I like the vehicle or the plodding your way along as a definition to overland a little bit, because you're seeing a lot of different places. So the sightseeing, the activities that you're doing, you could schedule an overlanding trip where you're skiing in Colorado and you're surfing in Baja in a week.
Yeah, that's sick. Like, that to me is overlanding.
Yep.
I guess if I had to actually put a definition on it, my definition would be vehicle-based camping with the actual off-road travel as the primary focus. And that's like, I mean, that could change. You ask me tomorrow, it could be different, but it's mainly, yes, vehicle-based, being self-sustained, but also using that vehicle to get to cool locations.
Yep. Okay, so maybe I don't know if it's a controversial question or not, but like, do you see buckets of overlanding? And let's just use vehicle sustained travel. We go Tacoma, Tundra, full size truck, and then we go into the van world. Well, I mean, we don't even need to get into Earth Rummers, but we can, because I feel like that's like Saudi princes that are buying those every once in a while.
Yeah.
So it's like, for me, it's a big disconnect of like, who do you see driving around with an Earth Rummer? But you've went out and done this stuff in these big rigs. I think from Storyteller, you did one in one of theirs. So
they released a new hilt.
Give us some insight on that.
So for me, like rooftop tent on a Tacoma, or even go a step smaller than that, say like a Crosstrek, a Subaru, like as long as you can have a camp set up and be able to sleep, I think that is my most ideal form of overlanding. And then full-size truck, that's all in the same boat. But then when you bump up to a van, or even say a trailer, like an enclosed teardrop trailer or something like that, that's where a lot of people will disagree. And they're like, that's not even overlanding anymore. And
you think it's a difference in a lifestyle choice? Like, because when I think of vans, like I honestly, like I think of rock crawlers living in vans. That's what I think of.
Yeah.
But that's just a stigma.
It is a stigma until you actually experience it. So I've put my van in insane places. Like just this past weekend, I was in the San Juans, like down in Ouray and Telluride, and it was a big van event put on by my buddy's shop, and the like hard wheeling group took, I think, 4 or 6 Sprinter vans up Imogene Pass, which is like gnarly for a Sprinter van. I have another friend who was there who also ran Engineer Pass in its entirety in a Sprinter van. And like you run into people out on the trails and a lot of them hate you because they're like, this vehicle doesn't belong here. And then you have people who are just open to it all and they're like, wow, you guys are insane. Like I didn't know Sprinter vans could do this.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you have to go and do all of these like crazy hard wheeling trails and stuff like that, but Sprinter van for me fits into that smaller category because they are surprisingly capable. And I preach it all the time, but they're nuts. And then when you bump up to an expedition vehicle, like an Earth Roamer, Storyteller Hilt, Storyteller Next, I don't have enough experience with them to get a full feel for like yes, they are capable, but they're huge. So I
feel like I could 100% get an Earth Roamer stuck.
Yeah.
Like no fucking trouble. I know I could get one stuck.
Yeah. So for me, like if you're overlanding in my sense of the word with that, you are putting in a ton of miles. Like you're taking that through the Southwest to Baja. Granted, you're showering, you're sleeping in a king size bed, you have dual cooktop, like you have a house on wheels.
Right.
As long as it can get off-road, which some of them are decently off-road capable. I don't know because I haven't fully put one to the test. But then if I compare that like Class C RV up against say a Winnebago, like a true road warrior or a Class A, that to me is not overlanding. If you're going to take your Class A up a dirt road and like park at a campground, that's fine. That's camping.
Yeah, that's Cruise America. Get a rental and take the fam to Yellowstone.
Yeah, but if you're getting a vehicle which primarily has an off-road focus, whether it's capable or not, like if you can get into some dispersed areas and you're not hooking up to electricity and water and stuff every night, that to me is more overlanding. Like that's where the line really blurs.
So okay, I'm going to talk about me for a second and kind of get your advice as I kind of try to make this decision, because my Tundra engine is one of the ones that has got the issues, and I use the term blew up. I'm like, I text Ryan, like, I think my Tundra engine just blew up. Text Tanner, I think my Tundra engine just blew up. Driving home from True Automotive, and I'm driving down the highway, and it's like engine loss of power, engine failure, seatbelt this, or parking brake that, and my fucking truck is shaking going 60 miles an hour down 25.
Oh, so this actually happened then.
Oh yeah. And then so this is the third occurrence. So the first one was on the way home from Jackson Hole. I was towing the RMO trailer.
Yeah.
Going up one of the mountains coming out of Jackson, I think. and I'm going 65 up the mountain. I got 2 semis on my right, one on my ass, and I lose all power.
Oh no.
And I'm chilling in the left lane, like, what is going on? Like, I'm hitting the start button, like I'm just dying on the side of the road trying to get over, not get ran over. Man. That one was scary. And then when I was in New Mexico 2 weeks ago, going over the pass, pulling a trailer with a like Razor on the back of it. And dude, I'm on a single lane road. I mean, just a straight drop off on my right side, and the fucker loses all power. And they're like, pull over somewhere safe. This is what my Toyota said. I think I took a video of it. Pull over somewhere safe and let the vehicle rest or something like that. And I'm like, I'm literally on a cliff where a Toyota is supposed to be. There's nowhere safe to pull over. So I sat there and blocked this pass for like 2 hours because we couldn't do anything.
2 hours.
Truck wouldn't start.
Holy shit.
So it's made me think a lot about overlanding and the driving experience. Mm-hmm. Dude, I had a hell of a time putting 250 miles on the Razor in 2 weeks. Like, that driving experience was fun.
Yeah.
And it brought something to what I love to do, which is hunting, but it brought the overlanding and the driving experience everybody talks about. But like, I don't really want to go over these passes going 12 miles an hour, looking out my window, just going boom, just slow up and down bumps. So the decision I'm trying to make is, should I go back to a Super Duty or a full-size truck and do the expedition like Polaris, like driving experience? Like, I think that thing is real. Like, I think it's a lot of fun. But what is your thoughts about maybe trailers and the driving experience of overlanding?
So depending on how you build out your vehicle and what the vehicle is, that will determine the driving experience.
Okay.
And this leads into another topic that we can get into, but people will take a Tacoma and they'll put 10 grand worth of suspension on it. And when you're purposely off-roading and overlanding and wheeling, your driving experience is going to be better like that. I don't think that's necessary though. Yep. So knowing you and what you do, I think a Super Duty with a trailer, with your tent and everything, you could have base camp on there.
Yep.
And then to have some kind of Razor, General, Can-Am, whatever it is, to then go explore around. That makes more sense for you. You're going to get more utility out of it. You're going to enjoy it more because you're not slamming around in a big truck.
Yep.
So it's really situational,
yeah,
I guess is what it comes down to.
Well, and I think that's a big key for us next year is what's your recreation? Because we could, like, you have the option to do all of these things, mm-hmm. right? My recreation really is spending as much time out of the office in the woods, in the fall, in the mountains. That's like what I love to do. And I need to figure out a way to expand it to, spring shed hunting, summer, just like out there hiking. But I went 38, this was a ways for me. I went 38 miles out from camp in this little Arctic Cat, little mule thing. Yeah. And it took me an hour and 45 minutes to get home in the dark. And like, I was screwed if anything happened, like in the middle of absolute nowhere. But there was something about that.
Yeah.
That was just like legit, where I was just like, cool, I'm just going to get one of these things and go 50 miles without my truck and just hang out somewhere that other people can't get to.
So I did have a Razor, which I actually just sold recently.
Okay.
And my reason for that was because I love it so much. Like, when I get the opportunity to pull that thing somewhere, offload it, and go rip around, that is one of the most fun off-road experiences that you can have. Like, you look at any obstacle, and it's just like, I can drive this thing up the side of a mountain with no trail in it. It's just like incredible. The reason why I kind of went away from that is because of the time involvement. Like, I don't have a ton of time when it comes to making videos. Like, I'm posting 1 to 2 videos a week consistently. I haven't missed a weekly upload in 8 years now, or however long it's been. So when I wanted to go do a camp video and take my Razor, at the time I didn't have my Tundra, so I'd take my Sprinter van, load up the trailer, pick everything up, have all of my filming gear, my helmets, like everything to use that, then go pull it somewhere, say to Moab, find a place to park it with the trailer, unload it, then go rip around while I'm filming, and then come back. Like it just makes the process way more involved. So for you, that setup makes sense. Like you are going out there to hunt, to shed hunt, whatever it is. That makes more sense. For me, I like being able to pick what vehicle I want to take, where it's already set up, has a tent, has my gear in it. I can just go, okay, today I'm taking the Tundra, get in the Tundra and go. I don't have to worry about towing something. I don't have to worry about extra gear. Again, granted, it's super fun.
Right.
It's just a way more lengthy process. And generally, I'm only camping in one spot for a day, and then I'm going to the next one. So when it comes to overlanding, then, like I said, like if you're towing something like that, you're not really going to be getting the feeling of overlanding. You're going to go and set up at a campground, go rip around, come back, and maybe do it the next day. So I'm more into the traveling in the vehicle that I have and being more mobile, I guess.
So one of the things that you said in there was one thing that I did want to talk to you about was just like, built vehicles. And I think that maybe what I'm hearing you say is that the driving experience is important too. And I feel like and I might get just chastised for this, for all the people that have built trucks for me, but I don't think I've ever driven a truck that I modified that drove better than when I just got it stock.
I am so on board with you for that. And if people disagree, it's whatever. You're entitled to your own opinion. But that's why this year I went into building 2 different vehicles now, way differently than I did in the past. When I bought my first Tacoma, I already had a super heavily modified Sprinter van, which I modified slowly over my 5 years of owning that thing. So I was like, maybe some lights in this situation could be useful, and then some suspension and bigger tires, like that could be good. And then when I went into building the Tacoma, a lot of people were like, oh, dude, run our product, run our lights, run our tent, run our whatever, rack, cover. So I built that truck really fast and ended up overbuilding it for what I'm truly interested in. I just want to get out, hit some trails, and camp. Spend time with friends, family. I'm really not much into wheeling super hard. Like, don't get me wrong, it's fun from time to time when I'm doing it, but how many people do we know they build out these crazy trucks with a ton of modification, especially suspension, and then they're like, we're going wheeling this weekend, and then they come back and the truck's broken, and then it sits in a shop for 2 weeks or more to get fixed. So going into building now a new Tacoma and a new Tundra, I wanted to basically show people like, hey, I built that last truck really fast because I had the opportunity and I wanted to try new things. But like you said, the truck kind of drove like shit afterwards. Like it's good for the purpose of off-roading, and it's going to perform better than a stock truck, but I don't need all of that crazy gear. So people see me as an example, or any other creator, they're like, oh, I need to get that suspension, I need to get that locker, I need to do all this stuff to my truck to do what these guys are doing. So going into this year, I was like, hey, I want to get that kind of stigma and push it aside. I'm going to take a stock truck with relatively stock suspension, throw a rack and a tent on it, and go out and use it. And I mean, I'm putting these trucks in still really cool places, and I'm hoping it's inspiring people to go, oh, you know what? Maybe I just need some kitchen gear and a nice tent and stock suspension, maybe do a bigger tire here or there, and I can use this stock vehicle to its potential. Especially these new trucks. Like, I opted for the TRD Pro for the Tacoma, which is expensive, and it's not generally what I would do. I would buy a lesser model and upgrade it. But I was like, let's see what this suspension and what this truck is really about. And that thing, dude, it's amazing.
I always say that because I don't know a lot about the technical off-roading. So, like, when I talk to the guys, I'm like, most vehicles stock can go farther than the person's experience will allow them to go if they build it.
That's a big thing too. Like, it really comes down to the driver mod, is like you call it in racing. So you look at people like myself and my friends that I was talking about that just ran Imogene Pass in a Sprinter van. If you're not experienced off-road, you're not going to be able to do that. even if you have a stock Tacoma, like that's going to scare a lot of people if you don't know how to drive off road. So the more experience you have driving off road, the more you realize that, like, okay, maybe now I could upgrade the suspension and get a little bit more out of it.
Yep.
If you're not experienced off road and you have a truck and just dump a bunch of money into it thinking that it's going to be better off road, you're sadly mistaken.
Yeah, you're losing money.
You're losing money. Sure, the truck looks cool, and at the end of the day, it does perform better off road. But if you don't know how to drive that, you're just pissing money away.
Yep. So I'm like always, every single truck I've ever had, and I've had a lot of vehicles, they've always been lifted. And I would say that my desire to go back to a full-size truck is because I don't really care necessarily that it's lifted. I care about sitting up higher. That's where I'm comfortable. That's where 20 years of driving now, that's what I know. Like I like me going and driving in a car is like weird for me as a driving experience.
Yep.
So I think part of me wants, like, I don't like the way most Tundras that I see driving down the road look. I like how big mine looks.
Yeah.
Like I like sitting up higher, and that's really the only reason I lifted it.
Mm-hmm.
And, with my old Super Duty, I didn't do much to it. I think we leveled the front and put airbags in the back. But I had an 8-foot Super Duty, like a tank.
That's a truck.
There's so many car accidents, so many, more people die of car accidents probably than anything else. So like, I like feeling secure, and that's why I like driving a big truck. That is the reason I like driving a big vehicle.
I'm in that same boat too, but also for me, it comes down to ground clearance. Like that's why, I run my main setup, like my philosophy for this year is to keep things as stock as possible as far as like suspension goes, because when you change that, like you said, it starts riding pretty poorly. Even though it's really expensive suspension, like the factory ride, the way the vehicles come, the geometry and everything, they drive pretty great.
Yep.
So the TRD Pro Tacoma is already the tallest Tacoma because of the suspension and everything. The only thing I've changed on that is a stiffer spring in the rear.
Okay.
Still exactly the same. It's actually a 3rd-gen Tundra spring. So like taking the springs from my Tundra, putting it in there, gives you a little bit of rake, so it lifts the back end up. And then when I have a tent, rack, and gear, it's kind of nice and level.
Yeah.
The Tundra, I did do 37s on that, which that gives you a lift in itself. And then I just did a preload collar lift with a stiffer spring.
Yep.
So I'm really not changing much of the factory geometry, and that's getting the truck higher off the ground. Because, you look at a stock Tundra, they're wimpy. Like you said,
that's what
it's
I
like,
think. It's like I can step right in them. Why'd you put running boards on there?
Yeah, you look like our Tundras specifically look very similar.
Yep.
And then I passed just a completely stock one, and I'm like, that doesn't even look like the same vehicle.
Yep.
It really doesn't. So
that's the fun part about modifying a Toyota, and that's what I think is very cool about the Toyota market, is like you really can get to the point where you don't see a lot of Toyotas that necessarily look the same.
Yeah.
You see a lot of F-150s that, Raptor's a great one. I love a Raptor, like would drive a Raptor, but I hate seeing them all, and they just look, every single one looks the exact same.
Yeah. That's kind of why, like, people always ask me, they're like, oh, why are you so into Toyotas? And I'm like, well, the reliability, that's something that we don't know where it's at with all these new vehicles. But previously, the reliability and the aftermarket support. There's so many awesome companies that make stuff for these trucks that you can fine tune them, whether it's for performance or aesthetics, functionality. You can fine tune them exactly to what you want to do. And then you look at the Jeep market, and I don't want to talk shit on Jeeps, but a lot of the stuff that I see there is like, maybe it's just what I notice on the road, but it's a lot of like really poor manufactured products from overseas, which is fine, but I don't see a ton of like American company support for that. And I know there are. People are going to say, oh, what about this company and that company? I just think it's a taste thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like,
well, we did Destination Outdoor with Toyota, and I've had conversations with vehicle manufacturers, and I won't say which ones, but they ask me, like, how can we catch up in the overlanding market? And my answer to them is usually pretty direct.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't hold an event and you can't get X amount of trucks or SUVs out in the field with a community of people that are excited about their vehicles, you have a long ass ways to go to catch Toyota, because the community of Toyota, being in the industry and seeing it, I drive a Toyota. I drive too many vehicles, so it's not longevity for me, because like they're gone before I have to worry about 100,000 miles, right?
I'm kind of in that too now, but yeah.
But it's community. Like it's very hard, and you throw GM, Chevy, Ford all into this bucket and say, can you guys go hold an event and get 400 off-roaders? Okay, you're behind on overlanding. You for damn sure can do it at every single hunting event. When you go to any total archery challenge event, it's not dominated by Toyotas, not at all. Like, it's dominated by other brands
and Ram, and
But they need to lean into that community of that's where they're at, and not the like don't come into overlanding Ford, because it's not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm more saying that it's hard to build that community of all these people that are excited about it. Then it turns into manufacturers, because guys are tinkers and they want to make the shit. That's where it gets fun for Toyota.
I agree with that through and through. Like, I will always put community at the top of anything in the outdoor space. Because like at the end of the day, when you're sitting around a campfire, it's like you just want to be surrounded with cool people, tell stories, and that works the same for if you're hiking, mountain biking. It's like you just want to have experiences.
Find your people.
It's really not all about the gear. I will say that, and I'm not going to throw any manufacturer under the bus, but there is a manufacturer that is relatively new, and I found out recently that they do not want to sell parts to shops for people to work on them unless it's a dealer. So say a small shop like one in Denver, if they were like, hey, we want to order some CV axles and this and that from Toyota so we can install this stuff, Toyota has no problem with that. They're like, cool. There's a manufacturer who's not into that. They're also not into people making aftermarket parts for their vehicles right now. And it's hard for me to see where they're coming from, because I just know so much about the industry. But look at Jeep, like years ago. Jeep there's no way they could have projected the type of cult following that they have. Yeah. People started modifying and making stuff for them on their own. And then at some point, Jeep saw this and they were like, wow, people are really into our product. Let's give them easier access to make products for these, because it's just going to make the community at the end of the day bigger overall. And Toyota's kind of doing the same thing. Like, people could argue against this or whatever, but something as simple as the new Tacomas, you can unbolt a frame horn and put 35s on there. Right. The third gen, you had to do a body mount chop, body mount relocate. Like, they're making the aftermarket support easier because they have been talking to the community for years, and that's what we want. Yep. Is it the best job ever? Like, could they have done things better? Sure. At the end of the day, we're always going to have our critiques, but they are at least very community focused. And when you're not community focused, if you're not taking care of your customers and listening to their feedback, that's when you just go downhill. Yeah. So I think they do a great job at that. Yeah. I mean, we've got other Toyotas here, and that's, it is a really, really, really big part of it. And maybe another controversial question, but like, how long do you think it is before the stock suspensions and what they offer, as the vehicle manufacturers are looking more at this space? And I mean, God forbid we have some other event that drives everybody outside again, like COVID. Yeah. But if we do, it seems like it expedites the process of like, you need to have this ready to go off the lot. I mean, the fact that Mercedes is making a G-Wagon Overland edition is just an oxymoron to me. Yeah. It just like doesn't make any sense, but it's like, damn, okay, when's this actually going to happen where the suspension companies may really start to feel it, or they're going to have to go to like
rock crawling vehicles, like a 1987 4Runner that you don't care if you tip over in
Well,
Moab.
I think specifically talking about Toyota, they're already doing a good job of that because they know Fox makes a killer suspension. Old Man Emu is another option. Fox and OME are making products to be an OEM manufacturer for Toyota. So Toyota, for them to develop a suspension that is just Toyota branded is like unheard of. It's like, hey, these guys make the best suspension. I mean, even their like lower level suspension is from Bilstein. So they're kind of outsourcing that stuff. And I don't think it would ever cause like a kind of a grind in between those, because Toyota's staying in their lane and they're like, hey, we're going to do what we do best. And then we're going to have Fox come in and use their technology that they've developed for 25 years or more. And then we're going to put that into our product because we know it's some of the best stuff.
Got it.
So there's a lot of companies that do that too.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, I think everybody probably would love for us to kind of talk like where we started when you and I first got together. We were working on product, and our kind of concept was, when you and I sat down, was like, let's just be really honest. Let's let people in kind of to the process. And now you've been through that process. And as we kind of go forward, like, we always get your guys' input on products. But as we talked a little bit before the podcast, we're getting to where a lot of our stuff is turnkey, would be the word that I would use, to where, okay, we're pretty much dialed on tents. There's little things that we can fix. But how have you seen it, I guess, in the world of marketing and the conversations around product of how much further do you think it's going to go? Like
as far as like innovation and new products?
Let's just use tents. Like, everything's white label, everything's knockoff.
Yeah.
There's nothing truly new coming out in a square box.
Yeah.
That's just wild and crazy.
Yeah, it's hard to think of like what is the next like big thing. A lot of people use the term game changer, which I absolutely hate because it's super overused. But I think like if I'm giving free spirit like business advice, I would say you have a ton of good tents already. Focus on what you have that's really good. Fine-tune things as you need to. Continue to take customer feedback from people like me, and just have a kick-ass line of product.
Yeah.
And then further down the line, maybe you want to branch out and say, hey, maybe we try like something electric or inflatable or new hinge mechanisms. Like, I would focus on getting everything dialed in. That way, when a customer comes here and says, I have this vehicle with this rack, what are my options?
Yep.
You can point them right in the same direction that they should be looking at. But yeah, as far as like the next big thing.
Well, let's ask it this way. You don't think rooftop tents are going anywhere? Like, you don't see a day 5 years from now where rooftop tents are not a vital piece of gear. I mean,
no, I think, because in between, so if rooftop tent is the middle, you have ground tent, and then one step up from rooftop tent is some kind of camper.
Yep.
And I think it's like, it's right in the middle there where will I sleep in a ground tent? Sure. Do I want to? Absolutely not. If I have something that I can set up in 30 seconds on top of my vehicle, why would I want to do that? And then if you go up to like a camper, whether it's a slide-in camper or pop top or something, then it's a little heavier. Maybe you're not getting into places that you want to get into. So I think there's enough gap in between ground tent and camper that the rooftop tent is kind of here to stay.
Yeah, I agree with that. I see it as that avenue as well. Like, I think you're making a choice between ground tents and rooftop tents at this point.
Yeah.
That's where financially, if you can do it, I think that most people are going to pick their rooftop tent over the ground tent. Just like you said, it is a different sleeping experience. Like, when we were out elk hunting, this dude was sleeping on a cot just outside. And then, like, we've done that before, too. No big deal. But I know I slept better than him. For sure, I slept better than him.
So that's another reason why, like, when we went into making the Aspen Light, I was really stressing on the size and weight, because you have people that have been doing ground tents, but they're like, oh, rooftop tent looks nice. But if it's a not crazy expensive, but if it's a pretty substantial investment for them, like $3,000, $4,000 versus a ground tent, and they're not using it more than 5 times a year, that's where that tent really comes into play, because you're kind of taking people from that ground tent market because it's lightweight, it's more affordable, and they can take it off easily.
Yep.
So that's kind of like I saw that from my audience and people who want to get into it, but they're like, I can't put a 175-pound tent on top of my vehicle when I'm driving into the office Monday through Friday.
Yep.
It just doesn't make sense. So I think that was a really good and successful product because it kind of took away from the ground tent. Not taking away, but it gives people the option who are curious an easier point of entry into the rooftop tent game.
Totally. I agree with that. So we started on that thing, and I would say that the last 18 months below cab height has become very popular in this space. And I think that the way to see that is you look at the long-standing truck rack companies and you see them trying to catch up in the below cab height game. So with that being said, I think the below cab height game takes you into 2 categories. It's either efficiency, or it's like you're worried about technical off-roading.
Yeah.
Do you agree that that's accurate?
Yeah, and I'm very much into the below cab stuff. I mean, obviously we did the Tundra, like custom Sherpa rack, fits perfectly, and then the Tacoma as well. And I guess my idea behind that is it's a mixture of both. It's both aesthetic and function.
Okay.
I have seen some trucks with like your Aspen on it where they do an above cab rack, but it's still, the tent is pretty slim. And that to me is like, that's okay. But if you're putting a 9.5-inch high country up above your cab, above your roof rack, then you're sacrificing miles per gallon. You're getting way tippy. And if you're off-roading like that, that is a big concern. So that's why I'm very much into below cab as much as possible.
Yep.
And I've kind of gotten away from that a little bit with the Tacoma. I have boxes up there now, which previously I would not have put on my roof in the past. But it's all come together, and I mean, it's constantly evolving. Like,
I had a guy in here the other day at a Jeep, and he built it, pretty good. And we were laughing because we were talking about like, he's going to go out to Moab and he's got this trip. And I was like, we were debating between Aspen V2 Standard and Aspen Light. We're at 135 pounds and we're at 110 or 100 pounds. And he goes, man, how much of a difference could that 35 pounds make of me tipping or not? My answer to him is, look, Free Spirit's on the lightweight side of rooftop tents across our entire lineup.
Yeah.
I can't tell you exactly what that weight is going to be, but I told him, I go, you sure as hell probably not going to do anything hard enough to tip that brand new Jeep and scrape the shit out of the side, are you?
Yeah.
And he's like, no. And I go, okay. To me, then the 35 pounds doesn't matter.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm sure there is some kind of calculation you can do where, well, actually I know there is because I'm so in depth in the van world, but it's like every 10 pounds, and don't quote me on this, but every 10 pounds you add to the top of a van, it brings up your center of gravity, like say an inch or something like that.
Okay.
So there is like ways to calculate that and science behind it. But like you said, like, are you really that concerned where 35 pounds, like, I mean, you have to be at the point of literally about to roll over before you would even think about that.
Right.
And I try not to put my vehicles in that situation as much as possible.
Well, my simple mind goes to, if there's no way that Sprinter van is tipping over, there's no way a Tacoma is tipping over on the same trail.
Yeah.
Right? So like how many, I just don't see out on the trail very many cars tipped over, but I'm not on the technical, like what I would consider technical off-roading where you've got a spotter, you've got somebody watching you come through, like,
yeah.
But if you're going out by yourself on the weekends and taking your family out, you're not having your 6-year-old get out there and be like, yeah, Dad, there's a rock right there. At least me. I don't think you are. Yeah. So I don't think weight is as big of an issue for, I always say like the 1% are the ones that are doing the really difficult stuff that probably have to seriously think about it.
Yeah.
But I would say every single elk hunter on the planet, in my world, you don't have to worry about tipping your truck over.
Yeah. One more thing, though, to add on top of that is it's not only about tipping over, but if you have 50 extra pounds on your roof, the ride quality on-road and off-road is going to significantly change.
Okay.
Depending on your suspension setup. And I experienced this last weekend. My buddy's Sprinter van has a ton of gear on the roof. He's got fans and gearboxes with all sorts of whatever, shackles, recovery stuff in it, and shovels. And watching him off-road with that extra weight up there when you're going, and like I said, on road too, when you're coming in and out of a curb, like out of a gas station, you're going to get that rock. And it's more pronounced in a Sprinter van because you're sitting so tall, the vehicle's tall, but same thing in a truck. If you have a lot of weight up there, you need to have the suspension set up knowing that's up there, because when you rip out onto a highway and you go down a curb, like you're going to get that kind of head rock. So the lighter it can be up top, the better it's going to ride overall, especially when you get off road. So I didn't think about it that way, but I know the feeling, because when you've been in some like Raptors or RZRs that have incredible suspension and you don't feel that lean in like going around a corner like
at high speeds.
The
slap back. Exactly. Yeah. So that I didn't really think about it but I think about that as a high speed thing, but it's also when you're watching a vehicle off-road, you can see it.
It's low speed for sure, because you're going to notice it the most low speed.
Interesting.
Yeah, and like that, I mean, we're getting really down the rabbit hole there and like talking about really use cases and stuff like that, but it's legit.
So then do you, because of the below cab height stuff, you know, the industries kind of went in these waves of, you know, soft shell tents, all fold outs. I mean, like there was not a hard shell before COVID really. Then they went into full hard shells, Aspens, Odysseys, Evos, all this different stuff, kind of took the cake for a couple of years. Now we're seeing this resurgence of fold outs. And do you think that they're better rooftop tents just having like a fold out versus a true hard shell? Or do you think there's a big difference for people?
Like better in what way, do you think?
Well, I think for sure when you go below cab height, it's, if you don't have a bed like we had, the 6.6 bed or whatever, you really struggle below cab height with a full hard shell.
Yeah.
You know, a typical hard shell, 2-person, 85-inch long tent. So that resurgence, I feel like, of not soft shells, but fold outs is coming back partly because of the below cab height trend. It's still what you see the most of.
Yeah. I spent probably, I think my first night in the high country ever the other weekend at the Sherpa event. Okay. Because like I had it on the rustic trailer before and it was buggy. It was the King. I was pulling it with my van.
That's right.
It's like I don't really need to sleep in this. But one thing that I noticed is like, yes, the setup takes longer, but there's a ton of room in there.
I know.
That thing's longer than the Evo Short on my Tundra. So that aspect I like. So I mean, if you can fit multiple tents on your vehicle and you have the option to go with one or the other, no matter how you do it, there's always going to be pros and cons to each.
Yep.
Like the high country on my Tacoma takes longer to set up, and I can't keep as much stuff in it as the Evo. And then the Evo sets up really quickly, and I can keep a lot of stuff in there, but it's shorter. Mm-hmm. And I mean, in my case, it fits the truck just as good as the high country does. But no matter how you look at it, there's going to be pros and cons.
Yeah, I think the way I because I spent 14 days in high country V2 King, and I would have not had it any other way. But the reason why I could do that is because I wasn't moving every night in a typical overlanding setup. So to me, the whole time and how long does it take to set up, it's still way faster than taking down a ground tent and like what we used to do. So I opt for more space, and the reason why I run King is because I find that in a multitude of climates, whether it's cold, hot, or in between, I feel like a bigger tent in King, I get the benefit of both aspects of it. Like I don't feel like a big tent gets as hot as maybe what a smaller 2-person tent does.
Yep.
And then on the flip side of it, when it's really cold, I may have 2 or 3 people in there that's creating body heat versus me by myself in a small tent.
Yeah.
And so I opt for the big ones because setup to me is like, I can set up any tent at Free Spirit in under 2 minutes. So like, what the hell are we bitching, like complaining about? It's more the extreme scenario of like tearing down in a rainstorm. And it's like, I'm getting soaked either way. Like I can do all the tents in the same amount of time.
That's the thing. I mean, we're talking about a ton of first world problems, and it's just kind of a joking way, but it's true. It's like, I like the Evo because I can set it up and take it down in 30 seconds. And then I'm like, oh, I got to set up this high country mini and it's going to take me longer. For me, I like the quick up and down because I do move every day.
Yep.
But if I was going out hunting like you, I would totally want the biggest tent. I would take the High Country King and just leave it set up and not have to worry about it.
And I think that's where it's good for majority of people, is where I think the fold outs make sense. Is I think that there is this overlanding community, but as we blend more into the camping community, the hunting community, the mountain biking community, whatever it is it as mobile as overlanding.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like the resurgence of the bigger tents is coming back, because most people are getting in their car from Denver, they're driving out to the mountains, parking it, cooking hot dogs with their kids, sitting around a campfire and letting them play in the dirt. That's like a fold out's world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're staying put.
And then another thing for me too is like you said, setting or breaking down in a rainstorm, that sucks. So you have a tri-layer tent where you can be super comfortable in the cold. But if I'm going to pick the tent that breaks down easiest, because in the morning when it's 20 degrees and you're like, damn, I got to be back at home in like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like messing around with buckles and stuff like that and your fingers are frozen. That to me is something that I do a lot.
Yep.
A lot of people are fair weather campers and that's fine. But I am often breaking down my tent when it's really cold. So that's another reason why I opt for the quick up and down.
So I'm going to spin off of this because I want your kind of truthful, professional feedback of people talk shit on our latches like it is going out of style. And they're like, oh, just a cheap Amazon latch, blah, 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 blah. Well, from my point of view, it doesn't fail. And I think from your point of view is go ahead and talk about doing latches that are big and bulky in the cold with a key in the inside of them.
The keys and the old, not going to throw people under the bus, but the old style with a like a cable that you go under a hook, like it's tough. The only thing that I've noticed that could improve the latches, actually, let's talk about the pros first.
Okay.
They're very easy. You can move them around. You can have them wherever. And then if you break one or something happens, it comes off, you can order one on Amazon. It's like $4 or whatever. Rather than something proprietary that this company makes, if it breaks, you got to do warranty claim. And like you can't just have a quick, easy solution. The only downside that I've ever noticed with the latches is the kind of the hardware. So like if it's not a nylock on the bottom for adjusting the latch in and out, I've had one fall off. And again, I could just order one on Amazon. So that's really the only downside to them.
Yeah, that is, and I'm working on trying to figure out some solutions on that. But I'm also, I don't want to take away from how useful the latch is in a very simple way, because like in my world, the reason why we use that latch is because it's simple, and I get stuck in ice storms and shit in the fall and in the winter where like I don't want to have to get out a torch and melt that locking mechanism apart so I can get a key in it that is total bullshit, because you can just put your finger behind it and unlock it. And it's like, I don't want to do all that as like a facade to think that I'm like safe. Cause I'm also the dude that's not worried about coming back to my campsite and finding somebody sleeping in my living room.
Yeah.
I just don't like, if somebody's going to break in, they're going to steal your shit and leave, like, but I don't keep anything up there for you to steal. So it's like, my worry is them sleeping in my bed. Like, I want to hear that story sometime.
Yeah.
Like, if it ever happens, please call into Free Spirit. I will have you on the podcast if you document you come back to camp and there is somebody sleeping in your Free Spirit tent. Like, so I'll give you a free product if that happens, but you can't make it up.
No, I agree. Like, I do lock up important gear and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like, if I have something stolen, that person probably needed it more than me.
Yep.
Like, whatever. I'm very easygoing in that sense.
But we also know, and I think this is a good thing for the new people. Let's say they've never tried this before and they're worried about camping. I always say you're joining a different community. You're not hanging out in downtown Denver at a club at 2:00 in the morning and you're worried about your car getting broken into. Like, people know that you're out there in a vulnerable situation, and if they take something from you, they don't know the consequences of what potentially could happen to you. Yep. So I feel like the community understands, and I don't know if theft is a huge problem in overlanding.
I think it depends on, like, as far as out in the wild, I don't think it's a huge problem because, like you said, the community understands. Like, I don't even like driving near someone's camp spot. I'm like, hey, you're out here trying to get away? Me too. Like, I'm going to go around and not walk through your area. But then when you're camping or going to places that are super populated, then you get just weekend warriors that don't know the etiquette and they do things that are a little like you look at them and it's like, come on, man. I have so many videos of like posted up on the side of a cliff somewhere, and we're in a popular area, cliffs everywhere in every direction for like a mile, and people roll up, park right next to my vehicle, and then they walk through like past our campfire out to the ledge. And I'll literally pull my phone out and just film them walking through, like, really?
Right.
And they just don't know. And
and it's cool. It's kind of a whatever thing. And I tend to forget about like maybe where people go back home to and why they need or why they think it's important to lock. I always think about out in the field, and I probably need to come back a little bit and think more about like, where do you park your car at night when you're at home going to your office job the next day?
Yeah, don't park in shady areas.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think that there's reasons to lock things up, but it really sucks when you're out there and you can't get your latches to work. And so simple.
So back to the latches too. If I were to design my own latch, the only thing that like could make what you guys do better in a sense, it would cost way more, but like having that same style, but like billet aluminum.
Yep.
And like that would be rad. I appreciate things like that, but until I see another latching mechanism that sparks a new idea for me, it's just so simple. It works. If it's all billet and can like move in a different way rather than nuts, like that could be better. Yeah. But that's an expensive part. And yeah, I don't have an issue with the latches at all. Okay.
Well, that's good to know, because we take your advice, and we're at about an hour and 10 minutes. And so you and I could talk for 2 hours. We can do this again for sure. I think I don't know if we touched on everything we were even supposed to talk about. But it's awesome to have you on, get to spend some more time. I know you've been busy and traveling like crazy, and I've been nuts too. So we haven't got to do this as much as we used to.
Yeah. I mean, when I'm home, I'll totally come here and do this whenever.
Awesome. So. Well, thank you for coming on. Thanks for sharing your advice to all the people. And wait, before I forget, I've never asked you this question. So I always ask people at the end of it, how did you get into this, or did anything happen in childhood that got you addicted to the outdoors? Anything your parents did that like a memory you can really remember that just sticks out pretty vivid?
Not so much overlanding, but I come from a huge family of hunters. I grew up like in the Appalachian Mountains, and my grandfather had about 500 acres. So like almost every day during the week, I can remember going up to the mountains and like putting out corn and just watching deer come in.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there, like I'm 6 years old with binoculars, just like looking. And my dad's like, "Oh, that one's been on our land for like the past couple months." And they'll like name them.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when hunting season comes around, like they would just go to their stands and they're like, "Okay, well, I know like there's this one big buck that comes around." So all that to say, like I was very much outdoors in the mountains all of the time. Yeah. We would camp occasionally, but never to the extent of like what we're doing.
What you do now.
Yeah. I mean, in high school, I would go down and go whitewater rafting at the New River in West Virginia, set up tents, stay there for like 4 days. Loved that. And then, yeah, it really wasn't, I just kind of like fell into this.
Yeah.
It was just like, I like being outside and doing things. And then it only makes sense that I was always into vehicles. So, I can build this vehicle that gives me the opportunity to experience more of this, whether it's mountain biking or hiking or fishing, whatever you're into. It just kind of all came together.
That's cool because I think that maybe you're like just starting out that way and that kind of path and then kind of where you've ended up is kind of one of the things that I respect about you is just like your curiosity as a person too. And I think that there's something about the mountains. There's something outside that like connects us in a different way that we don't really understand. And there's a reason why we protect it because it gives us so much back that we don't necessarily comprehend. And I think like I'm looking at some of your tattoos right now and it's like, I know you're curious about the world and outdoor things and the sky and just all of that stuff. So it's a very curious place. And I say all this because I always challenge the parents. We turned out okay.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I ate just as much mud as you did, so it's like, get out there, have fun, live those experiences because they'll give back way more than what you really even understand before you get out there.
Absolutely.
So love having you on, man. Appreciate your friendship and your support of Free Spirit. We'll do it again.
Hell yeah. Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me.
You bet.